if I were to ask you to sit in complete silence without anything to externally entertain yourself, how many of you would find it excruciatingly uncomfortable? Raise your hands. All right, put them down. In 2014, at the University of Virginia, social psychologist Timothy Wilson conducted an experiment. An experiment to examine whether people in that generation liked being left alone with their thoughts or not. To conduct that experiment, he accumulated a number of volunteers, locked them in a room without anything to keep them busy for exactly 15 minutes. They had the liberty to think about anything they liked in that room. Or if not, they could push a button and electrically shock themselves. Now you think, 15 minutes, anyone can do that? Among the people who had volunteered for that experiment, 67% of men and 25% of women chose to push the button. Can you imagine? 46% of people who had volunteered to be involved in that experiment chose to inflict an electric shock on themselves rather than sit alone with their own thoughts for a while. Why are people so uncomfortable with silence? Is facing your internal world really that bad? In my own experience, I too have noticed that people get extensively anxious when I leave them alone. Personally, if you were to leave me in silence, that would be the best thing you can do for me. At my home, both my mother and I are introverted people, which means we are accustomed to stay in our own spaces. We sit in silence, and we also think in silence as well. Now, while I'm privileged enough to have this comfort at my house, I do not get the same environment at school. There are people who are constantly surrounding me, which means more people equals less silence. So I've had to carve out these moments of silence for myself. If you were to ask my friends during lunch break, I take my bottle to the water station about 5 times in a span of a 25-minute lunch break. This expedition from my spot to the water station is the time for me to process and introspect whatever is going on in my head and come back with a refreshed mind. I cannot describe to you how agitated I get when people offer to accompany me. Not because I have anything against them, but I simply cannot survive 6 hours a day without being by myself for at least a while. Now, I can already hear your thoughts. Am I really here giving a speech in front of you all to tell you how much of a loner I am? Absolutely not. I am giving a speech in front of you all to tell you how crucial it is to sit in silence. Right now, according to neuroscientists, the highest form of intelligence our brain can achieve is metacognition, which means to be aware of all your cognitive processes. To put it simply, it is basically the ability to think, but also think about why you are thinking about those things. With this ability in mind, I have derived the competence to introspect and analyze my emotions with every fraction of the moments I have carved out for myself. When I feel emotionally tense, all you need to do is leave me alone, because I have trained myself to understand what I feel and why I feel it more than anyone who tries in silence. People today distract themselves from heavy negative emotions. People are all about embracing joyful emotions, but tend to deflect as soon as guilt, shame, embarrassment, or even jealousy infiltrates their brain. You know the time when you lay in bed, you're staring at the ceiling, and how every embarrassing moment of your life ruminates in your head, and you reject it? That is what I'm talking about. How will you overcome that discomfort if you don't face it firsthand? There are people who go on about their day upholding the mindset that if I forget about it, I am over it. You see, distracting ourselves from our emotions is something that we have learned to do to survive. We have certain core emotional needs, and when they are not met, the world can feel like a threatening place. So we learn how to disconnect, we learn how to withdraw, to navigate the fact that those feelings are not being felt in the first place. When you see something or hear someone say something and you internally flinch from whatever is causing the manifestation of your trauma, that is called a trigger. The triggering of your emotional discomfort isn't at all related to what happened. It is always related to how that situation made you feel because of your unresolved emotional issues. If you don't sit with that trigger and introspect it, that is going to be one of the biggest obstacles you will ever overcome in the long run. Because trauma just doesn't go away when you distract yourself. No, it accumulates. And when it accumulates, it destructs. If you keep subjugating those traumatic responses, do you know what that feeling of emotional discomfort will inevitably turn into? Mental health disorders. When those subjugated emotions accumulate and are not met with an outlet, that is known as emotional baggage. And over time, this emotional baggage develops into borderline personality disorders, post-traumatic stress disorders, eating disorders, anxiety disorders, depression, and so much more. People cannot sit in silence for 15 minutes with their own thoughts. Can you fathom how dangerous that is for one's mental being? My biggest concern is for the people who have accepted that fact without even understanding the core reasoning behind it. Oh, that's just how I am. I just need to forget about it and I'll move on. I am going to hold your hand when I say this. Your incompetence of emotional regulation is not a personality trait. You are sabotaging yourself by allowing this parasite inside of you to amass, and you don't even know it. This only highlights how desperately we need silence as human beings. Yes, we're social creatures. We depend on interaction. We depend on connection. But that doesn't mean constant excuses, distraction, and escape. Without moments of stillness, there's no space for reflection, no chance to process what we feel, and no way to understand ourselves. You keep filling up silence with all this talking, all this noise, but that noise will never fill up the void inside of you. As a former deflector and an avoidant of facing my internal world, I assure you, there is not a greater favor you can do for your brain than just let it be. Yes, it is going to be absolute hell for you to do that at this time, but mark my words, it is absolutely incomparable to the hell you'll create later if you don't face them right now. Thank you.